Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly Palantir podcast. Me, Sachin, and Kris are your hosts. This is a solo episode for us. We're not having a guest this week, so we get all the time to shine and talk about what we want to talk about. But we will be having more and up and coming guests over the next couple weeks. Very, very interesting stuff. The title of this pod that I titled it was Palantir stock has had a rough week, but the company had an amazing week. I think there were some really, really awesome developments over the past 7 days that we've seen, even though in the macro, the stock got below 11 today and had some rough days. So we're going to cover a lot of that stuff today. First, Sachin and Kris, how are you guys personally?
I'm good. I'm good. Just chilling at this point. I mean, COVID is starting to kind of take the back seat of everyone's concerns. Everyone was flying this weekend. Today, basically, I flew from LaGuardia to Atlanta, and let me tell you, the entire airport was packed. The security line was like all the way through the door. I literally must have spent like maybe 20 minutes on like the American Express lounge. By the way, if anyone here knows anything, the American Express Centurion lounges are awesome. Like, I don't know. Next time you guys fly, dude, try the lounge. You'll love it.
I'll try, man. I mean, to be honest, man, if you are used to flying through Middle East lounges, the American lounges sucks.
Oh yeah. No. We flew first class for a wedding, like maybe like a couple of years back before COVID, and let me tell you, those Middle Eastern lounges are on like another level. Like, it was awesome. We loved it.
All right, let's get into some news. I think the first thing that I had on the agenda, and feel free for you guys to mention stuff throughout the podcast. I think the first thing was the Jacobs partnership. I wanted to handle that and sort of re-explain what happened on that. So Palantir partnered with Jacobs. Jacobs, from what I understand in my research, because I hadn't heard of them before, is a strategic consulting firm that works with other larger organizations to create solutions for some of the world's biggest problems. And Palantir and them are coming up with a joint operating system-like product for water infrastructure challenges using AI and machine learning. Some really, really cool stuff. So, Kris, I guess I'll start off with you. What were your thoughts when you got this news?
I thought it was great. I mean, these are the clients that we want Palantir to have, right? We want Palantir to be partnering with companies that would lead into other verticals, right? A lot of people don't realize that the value of Palantir to an organization is not necessarily just like their own personal use cases, but the platforms that they can develop and then sell to other key players in that industry. So even if you look at, if you were listening to the conversation with Alex Karp on the fourth quarter, he was like, yeah, you know, we were about to partner with like this healthcare organization who wants to literally take that product and like send it everywhere to all the other hospitals or medical company, you know, anyone in medicine basically. So it comes down to just, you want to have large scale partners who have partnerships all along their value chain. And that just leads right into opportunities for more sales, right? So the way that I would describe it is Palantir doesn't necessarily need to have 100 sales reps, each one pitching to individual airlines. It's better if they get one big contract with Airbus, who now Airbus has its own salespeople that already have these existing relationships now that they can leverage, and now they have a joint partnership and they're able to use Skywise, which is built on Foundry, and expand it out, right? And then it just means high margin revenue for Palantir, and the sales channel opens up. So I think it's the same thing. So right now, with regards to like infrastructure plays, this is a major infrastructure play in a public water solution, right? We all know that, you know, there needs to be data that's being managed, especially when it comes to water consumption, water utilization, and also from monitoring from a regulatory standpoint. So everyone is going to require some level of monitoring. Well, guess what? If a company like Palantir can provide that baseline that then, you know, Jacobs kind of sells to its partners, whether it be local governments and like or water companies, that's just a really big vertical for Palantir. And Jacobs is actually not just water infrastructure consulting. They do a lot of other things. And Sachin, you might even know, but they actually have a partnership with Bechtel too, who like develops natural gas and all the other sorts of like refineries and stuff too. So this is a big industrial player. I mean, a lot of times we don't necessarily hear about them, but like I said, this one's a huge deal. So I'm glad to see this one.
Before Sachin goes, Kris, they're saying your audio is only working on the left, so maybe just like unplug your mic and try it again. Okay, Sachin, go ahead. What are your thoughts on this? From a consultant for the past 20 years, Jacobs is an engineering consulting firm. How did you feel about this from a business perspective and then from an engineering perspective for Palantir?
I think one key thing that everybody is slowly realizing, that you cannot do strategy work without having data insights. That is very different. I mean, people used to do it. I mean, I was doing a lot of work, and I mean, Excel and all kind of analysis is bread and butter for consultant. But everybody is realizing the kind of world we are moving in and the kind of problems we are solving. It's no longer about just having simple analysis done or slides and all that. Clients want us to deliver something that is running on the ground, and that is changing. Okay, this is why, I mean, like somebody who is like Jacobs, why they are going with Palantir, because they understand that data analytics is not their core expertise, but it is going to become core of what they do in their business. Second thing is, water management is one of the most underestimated business opportunity. I have said it several times that water is probably going to become one of the hottest commodities in many parts of the world. And water management is actually going to become quite focused as we move in the ESG more and more. People get too much focused on carbon emissions, but environment is not only about carbon. There are a lot of things which we do wrong, and they need treatment. And more regulatory environment is going to focus on it. In terms of third part, which I think which is very interesting, is that Jacob is not just like pure consulting. They're engineering consulting. Okay, that means these people understand. Again, but you need to understand, like, there are computer programmers and they are physicists and engineers. Physicists and engineers are very good when it comes to understand algorithm, understand the technical framing of the problem. What they don't have a lot of time is they are little handicapped in terms of tools, because many of them use just basic programming, basic Excel macros and all that. Now, when you merge these two kind of world together, it can really create value for client. I mean, if it creates value for client, eventually it builds brand for Palantir, in my opinion. Back to you guys.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because it's part of the reason I did a video on it this week that I invested in Palantir. Is like I saw their software literally being used everywhere. I was just listening to an Alex Karp interview on the drive back home before we started the podcast, getting my Alex Karp juices ready to do the pod. And, the way he was talking about it again, and I know we've said this over and over again, is like they're actually solving this problem that a lot of clients don't know exists. And this idea that they're selling a solution for a problem that clients know they will have 5 years in the future, I think innovative engineering consulting firms like Jacob start to recognize, okay, water infrastructure is a very big opportunity. Climate change, obviously, it fits within the mold of climate change. If we could create a data analytics platform for the biggest companies actually trying to solve these problems with the first-in-class software that is able to launch operating systems to manage data, because these are, as Sachin says, data problems, and that's a meaningful partnership. I think, how do you guys think of this partnership, like the Accenture Palantir partnership? Like, do you see Jacobs as a consulting firm being able to just recommend Palantir and sell it for them because Jacobs gets the benefit of providing a good solution and then Palantir gets the organic sales? Or like, how do you see this from a business perspective?
Go ahead, Sachin. You start first.
See, I think it is important to understand that what Accenture and what Jacob does. See, Accenture is a consulting company that has a lot of breadth. Okay, that means they serve a very large number of clients in large number of IT related topics. Okay, and their way of serving client is, you tell us what problem needs to be solved, and they are very flexible in terms of like, okay, we can really make things bespoke for you. So that's why they need a lot of tools in their artillery to create this kind of bespoke solution. And as fast and as better to do, that's pretty much drive their business. Now, Jacob is different. Jacob is looking to solve problem with high impact. Okay, they are very focused. Like in this particular case, they are not saying, okay, we are going to go with Palantir only. They say, we want to go in the water management business. That means their focus is to create alpha in the solution of the problem. Okay, so that's very different. Like when I say there are always two axes of a problem, one is the breadth and another is the depth. So this is where these two things are very different. So think about it in a way that somebody gives you an iPhone as a gift, you will be really elated. But if you're in the middle of an accident and somebody saves your life, you will be even more elated. So this is why you need to understand, like, when you help somebody in crisis, the bond you make with the people is very different, and it has to be a real help. And this is where I think the opportunities that are related with the depth access are very important. So this is where Accenture and Jacob is different. Accenture will bring Palantir to a lot of clients, but they may not be able to demonstrate the actual strength of Palantir in a way they should have been, because it will be very problem focused. But Jacob will be able to show at a lot of places the kind of depth and impact they have created with this, and how Palantir played a role in that. So there's a bit of like a positioning difference in both of these. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah. So once again, I think this is just a combination of talking about the network effects of having partnerships with one large player that can translate into more stuff. Do you mind sharing the screen? I think I just put it on there. So if you could share that, let me just show you guys something. Yeah, so if you look at this right here is Jacobs Engineering Group, which is what, the main thing. But the one thing I wanted to show you guys was the Jacobs Bechtel partnerships. I have a little bit more knowledge about Bechtel than other people, because I'm working on some side stuff. But if you look at the partnership, it's literally like doing environmental remediation work and management with the Department of Energy. By having that network effect, you're not only getting connected to the federal government for a lot of things, for a lot of environmental cleanups and everything else. So that's continuous revenue, but you're also getting partnered with really large corporations like Bechtel. Right now, a lot of people don't know what Bechtel is. It's a private company that does tons of engineering projects all around the world when it comes to developing projects. Like there's just so many things. I can't cover them all in just one conversation, but essentially anything that's related to energy development and nuclear and everything else, Bechtel has its hands in. So even though technically this partnership is with Jacobs, Jacobs has a partnership with Bechtel, and then Bechtel has partnerships with all these construction companies, all these giant oil refineries, these nuclear power plants. So it just goes right back into Palantir being able to get its hands on and just kind of make its way through almost all these other industries that normally you would not have thought about, right? So right now, Palantir's main goal is to get into people's doors, right? And I think they're doing it very successfully. So I'm glad that they targeted Jacobs, and hopefully they leverage that partnership into expanding out. I hope my microphone is coming on all of the things now. I hope it's not just one side. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up from both you guys, so I'll take it.
Okay, Sachin, anything else to say about Jacobs?
So I think one thing is also important, guys. These are a strategic partnership. That means it's not like the work is done. It is a start of a work. The battle is still ahead. I mean, these people still need to get working together right. They need to get the cultural fit right, and they need to deliver solutions to problem which neither Jacob nor Palantir could have done by themselves in the same time as they are doing it together. Until and unless there are examples of that kind of success, I mean, it's a good move, but yeah, let's not hatch the eggs right now. Okay, back to you guys.
Cool. All right. Next thing that was really interesting, we got to talk about this one, is this headline right here. Palantir Technologies is using to help cut NHS elective care backlogs, which essentially means that Palantir is extending its partnership with the NHS, which is the National Health Society in Great Britain. And the Foundry software, this was the biggest stat that I found from this article. The rollout comes after a recent pilot of Foundry system at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital Trust helped reduce the inpatient waiting time by 28, tens of thousands of emergency surgeries, including cancer treatment. So we can get more. We'll start with Kris. What were your initial thoughts when you saw this news?
So I don't know. You were cutting back in and out a little bit. I think I hear some echo coming from your side. But
Let me
so the National Healthcare Service is pretty much the default. It's like the nationalized healthcare for Great Britain, right? So everyone in the UK, they usually go to NHS. It's a public healthcare system. It's great. They've been around for hundreds. Well, I think almost 100 years now. One of the things about the NHS is that they're always trying to figure out ways to be more on the cutting edge because they're trying to always bring down their costs, but also deliver care to its citizens without too much friction. And I think that's one of the things that that's so great to see that Palantir is actually partnering with an organization that's that large, right? There's a lot of things, especially because I work in the healthcare industry, where there's things that are designed that are very siloed. And so they only work for like small organizations or a few hospitals. This is an entire national healthcare system, right? Imagine all the data that gets generated from every single hospital in the UK. Now, one of the cool things is they also now signed a very similar project with the VA to take all the data from the VA and optimize it. And the VA is the same thing. It's huge. It's all across the entire country in the United States. So it just goes to show you that the breadth of the software is not limited to the size of a company. And that's what I've seen. That's what I really like about Palantir, that they're like an all hands on solution to manage things on a like almost like a country level. I mean, if you look at the COVID cohort collaborative, right, and their partnership with the CDC, it's really, really hard to get everyone to come together with all their data and then be able to act on it. Same thing with the vaccine distribution, right? To do it on a national level and to get it set up in a very short period of time, it's mind blowing. So I think right now this is great. I do know that they're expanding their healthcare sales division a lot, and they're actually partnering with a lot of hospital systems. I can't tell you which ones, but I do have a few that I know. But yeah, like I said, this is a really great growth vertical for them.
So I think that's a very good explanation given by Kris. I mean, like, so guys, I joined this job in UK in October. I went there. I mean, I was there. So like the plan was that I'll go and I'll see like should I continue with the job, and I have some personal situations as well. So I was looking closely on like what the life for me would look like living in London, and the part of that is the health facility. So one thing I think I have to give credit to UK, that they have actually a quite functional national health services. I think it's pretty good. Having said that, I had a chat with a lot of people in my circle, my colleagues. Every one of them was unsatisfied with the backlog situation. This was an issue that was coming again and again. I mean, I was even asking, like, dude, why don't you even go to sometime private? They said even like a lot of time to go to private, they need some sort of a referral letter from their physician or their general doctor. Okay, so the quality of medical services is a different part, but getting that appointment to go and meet doctor was coming up as a quite a pain. I mean, like I have some medical conditions, and I thought about like family in a journal in a whole. So I thought, like, I mean, yeah, it's good, but it is something which kind of concerned me as well. So whenever I decided to leave my job after 2 months and staying back in Malaysia, yeah, that backlog thing was playing on my mind. So I know it's quite a severe thing, and people are really unhappy about it. So I mean, this is like really solving people's problem here. Back to you, Amit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I saw the news, I haven't done a full video yet covering it. This week has been hectic. I haven't really had a chance to go in depth on the article. But it's interesting, right? Because backlog, as you were saying, I didn't even know that was that big of an issue. 28% savings means that there's, as the article points out, tens of thousands of people that have a better experience in these public hospitals given the UK's nationalized healthcare service. And it's a data-driven problem. It's a more efficient, more effective problem as a result of Palantir. Let's answer Daniel's question. He said, I'll put it on the screen. Why is the NHS contract only 12.5 million a year? Should they be paid more? Any
So
answers?
I think this is a very early process, right? When you go and do sales, you're not going to start off by asking for hundreds of millions of dollars. You want to give them a sweetener. The early parts of it, it's just getting into these hospitals, showing value to people, and then once you get to a point where you scale up to more and more, then you can ask for more prices, right? So an example that I would give is that if you see the article, it doesn't say, oh yeah, this is for the entire hospital, entire NHS. It's being limited to certain areas and certain sites. Once people find where the successes are and where the use cases are, then they can expand out to more hospitals and more regions, right? And then after that, they can ask for more money. It happens all the time. Like in my hospital system, one of the things is salespeople. They usually come in, they'll do a pilot program. They don't charge us very much during the pilot, if they charge us anything at all. And one site usually goes live with a product. They like it, they refine it. Then another hospital gets adopted in the chain. So then you pay them a little bit more. Eventually, it becomes an enterprise-wide software that everyone utilizes. So by the time that $1 million investment early on turns into a $25 million investment very quickly, right? So right now, Palantir is onboarding a lot of these contracts, and they're just, like I said, they're very. If you look at Foundry's age is really, really young. It's only been around since 2016. Yes, the company Palantir has been around since 2000 something, 2003. But Foundry itself is very young. Right now, we want to have as many customers as possible. Right now, the total revenue is not necessarily as important as getting a lot of people using the product. And then once the product utilization goes up tremendously, then you can start to, work your way in and get more value out of those contracts. So that's what I would say. Like, even though it's a revolutionary product, you need to get it into the hands of the people. And one of the things that you need to do to get it into the hands of the people is do it at a discount. And Palantir might actually be even losing money, believe it or not, even at 12.5 million a year, because there's costs that, are associated with getting this thing to be scaled up. So that's what I would say.
No, I think one thing I think people forget in sales a lot of time, I think especially in the analyst and Wall Street media. So you guys think about this. I mean, like, there are two ways sales is done. The one way to sales is done is by brute force. That means you go with all guns blazing and you try to do all the promotions, you create aura around it, and you try to dump as much as possible in bulk. See, another way is that you create value for the client, and the client asks question that I need to increase my gains further. What else do I need? And then they come back to you as you say, we need to increase the association because we need more out of it. And they say, if you need to more out of it, then we need to expand. Like, for example, everyone knows about Steve Ballmer laughing on $500 iPhone. Dude, do you buy a $500 iPhone nowadays? No, you buy like $1,000, $2,000. I mean, in most part of the world, the iPhone. Why? Because nobody has to convince you anymore that what value it brings to you. I mean, the most expensive phone I bought in my career was, I mean, and again, like if you're out of US, I mean, you have to pay taxes and all that. So phones can be really expensive. Is around $1,800. So I mean, that logic of that no one should spend. So their idea, like you do benchmarking, and benchmarking says, oh, my industry companies are spending 3 million on digital transformation. So if my budget is 4 million, that means there is something wrong. We are overspending. This is a simple benchmarking exercise does it to you. But when you are using it and you see that you are creating value which is above at par, you say, yeah, I want to do it more. And if I can create more cash with me, that means I need to use it more. So that's what people do. That's why the platform approach is important, provided platforms are right and they can really add values. Because if they are not right and they cannot add value, it becomes like a bad marriage. Okay, and this is why Palantir has one of the big issues is that because going to Palantir is not like going and buying, like for example, you go online and you buy an account of Canva. I mean, it is really something you have to think it thoroughly. So it needs a lot of thinking. It needs a lot of alignment in the organizations for people to come together. So there has to be a real value case, and it takes time. And sometimes, people don't like doing it. There are just power plays and politics, and they simply say, okay, why don't we do something simpler and modular, which looks pretty good in PowerPoint, but in ground it doesn't work. So that's the challenge Palantir has to overcome. And I mean, it's in terms of NHS, it's pretty simple. Bring the value. You show the value to client, they will spend more. I mean, at the end of the day, no one likes to see angry customers. And in case of NHS, what is happening is that people are angry on them because they are such a critical part. They need to serve people. So one thing if surveys that if they don't have capacity, that's a different problem. That means they need to increase the capacity. But if they are not able to serve people because how the queues are managed, I mean that's a data problem. And if by just solving this bottleneck they can improve their ratings and people's experience, yeah, I mean they will eventually do more on that. I mean everyone loves happiness around in a way. No one wants angry customers and no one wants anybody shouting at their face. So I think it's straightforward and simple from that point of view.
Yeah, one of the things I just pinned the comment, Crossroads says, it's strange that Palantir's contract was initially not extended with the NHS and there was heavy lobbying by privacy orgs in the UK. They switched and 6 months later came back to Palantir. Most people don't know that. Palantir's contract was only supposed to be for COVID vaccine distribution. And then the NHS, they said they were going to do it for 6 months and then they came back. And this article published by the Financial Times, that kind of shows the legitimacy of Palantir being used in the NHS and in the UK's health system. And I think Sachin's major point that I agree with very heavily is this idea of bringing value and then the rest will come. It's like one of the craziest things, and this is what Kris has been talking about for the past couple of weeks when we're comparing it to Snowflake, is Snowflake spends a lot on sales and marketing and a lot less on product. And I was just listening to Alex Karp, again, an interview from a couple months ago as I was driving home. And one of the things he was arguing about is that, look, we spend a lot on product because we are building the most differentiated software product in the world. Snowflake is not saving the NHS 28% of time for patients, which is thousands of people or tens of thousands of people in backlogs. Now, it's a different product. I understand there's different value propositions, but that's sort of the idea here. It's like this is a differentiated product that is not out of the box, that does need some consulting to be implemented into your organization. But when it is implemented, as Karp was saying in the interview that I just watched, you're not going to leave it. You're not going to go back. It's just like, is the NHS now not going to use Palantir? It's like, no. So it's like, this is a client that they're going to have likely for the next decade, simply because they've figured out how to make them a way more efficient and productive healthcare system. And the product's only going to get better because they're able to retain the best talent. Why they're able to retain the best talent? Because of the culture they bring. And that's a whole nother conversation, but that's sort of the holistic picture into Palantir.
And if some of you have lived in London, I mean, London has this culture of protest. I mean, I have seen it several times, even during my extended stays. I mean, there has been time I come out of my office and people are protesting outside my office and shouting at me. Okay, but yeah, I mean, and a lot of time you see that these are the same people. They just come back, same people holding banner for one protest today, and another day they are holding banner for another protest today. In this particular case, I remember, I think it is an organization that is called Open Democracy. They kind of try to sue NHS or some other organizations for Palantir, and some of these I was checking, and some of them have roots and funding from George Soros as well. So see, I mean, this is just a political stunt that a lot of people will create, and Palantir is exposed to these political stunts. It will drive value of Palantir down for foreseeable future, maybe for a long time, but it is what it is. I mean, if we live in this world of a different kind of polarized politics, we have to face the consequences also for that. But I'm not concerned because of it. I can say that part.
What's been interesting to me is that all these people with their privacy concerns, after the Russians started to make moves into Ukraine, all that stuff just disappeared. I mean, you look at the Ross Gerber situation. We need to send Palantir, the CIA to go take care of. I was like, look, this is how liberals think a lot. And I'm not going into politics, but at the same time, there's a lot of policies that people keep thinking, oh, well, you know what? We don't need this company that does this. Well, guess what? Right now, if there's a terrorist attack in the U.S., what's going to happen? Thank God there haven't been any terrorist attacks. A lot of these terrorist attacks are prevented by companies like Palantir, who are actually detecting things before they happen, right? And they're doing it in a way while also maintaining privacy and keeping safeguards against the government over abusing the power, right? So I think right now it's the same thing. The same groups that are involved with saying Palantir has too much power. I think a lot of them think Palantir is nefarious only because of its political affiliations between Peter Thiel and how Peter Thiel had a relationship with Trump. I think if Peter Thiel was not necessarily involved with with Palantir, I don't think Palantir would have got nearly the amount of scrutiny that it did recently. But what I really like though is that all those voices are starting to die down, right? They're starting to go away because they realize that there's value in having a product like Palantir on your side. And they took the stand of saying we are anti-Russia, we are anti-China before all these other Silicon Valley companies and all the Silicon Valley companies right now saying, oh, we're going to cut Russia off from this, we're not going to work with them. Palantir said, we have never worked with the Russians. We are never going to work with the Russians. So everyone right now, all the tech companies that have presence in Russia that are cutting things off, guess what? It's not a secret that the Russians have been our adversary for the last 20 years. Yet guess what? At the end of the day, you guys wanted to make money, so you partnered with them. You did joint projects with them. Now all of a sudden you turn around and say, oh, the Russians are actually bad. Bro, Putin's been around since forever. So you can't just go around and say, oh, yeah, we live by certain values. And then, the entire time Putin's been oppressing people and you allowed it to happen. You didn't care. And all of a sudden now it's such a big thing. And you do all this political theater. And that's what it is. It's all political theater. So I would rather be aligned with a company like Palantir, who's from day one said, look, we're not going to work with adversaries of the West. And you know what? That credibility other companies will never have, because now any company that says, hey, NATO, we want to work with you. Well, guess what? You also worked with the Russians about 10 years ago. Why should we trust you? Why don't we trust Palantir, who said we'll never work with the Russians? And that's what they've been like from day one.
Piggybacking off of that and transitioning from Sachin's point around Palantir providing the best value and then them going to win. Obviously, the stuff we've been seeing with Russia and Ukraine, NATO getting involved. Let's put this open out. Let's throw this open idea out there, and Kris and Sachin, you can take it anywhere you want. The general question is Palantir going to benefit economically and value proposition wise from the heightened tensions that are going on in Russia and Ukraine because of the differentiated value they bring for times like this? Are we going to see an increase in organizations buying Gotham? Are we going to see an increase in NATO getting involved with Palantir? How do you think what's going on right now, which is a horrible, abhorrent situation in Ukraine, going to result in Palantir's business? Sachin, okay, I'm muted you. You're good.
Okay. So I think it's very important that I think both Foundry and Gotham are going to be heavily benefited. Okay, the reason for that is very simple. See, when 2008-2009 crisis happened, one of the biggest challenge for different banks and why the trust was low, that nobody knew that what's their actual exposure is. They had a view on their exposure, but there was no actual exposure. Okay, I mean, like same thing, like when COVID happened, and even a lot of people, companies went into crisis mode because they knew things are going bad, but how bad? How much they need to open their war chest to survive? What they need to do next? So when you go into crisis mode, you spend a lot of money just to understand first. I mean, what's actually I am in. Okay, and this is why, like when COVID started, why NHS went to Palantir, because they said we need solution today. And like I said several times, that Palantir's core value is time to value, how fast it gives you the value. So when there is crisis, I mean, when there is no crisis, I mean, people can speak for hours and weeks and they can delay FDIC contracts but when there is crisis, people need things now. And there is an idea like, okay, because what is happening in the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and NATO has to reflect in one way or other way, and being Palantir is a quite important ingredient in it. But guys, NATO doesn't have a P&L. NATO has a binary objective in terms of saving NATO allies' interest at any cost. Okay, or at any reasonable cost. But companies have P&L. They need to, I mean, like different companies are having different kind of exposure. Like some people ask me like why companies are stopping selling their product, because I said the thing is, at this particular time, they cannot change the cost of their product in Russia. So even if you sell your product, I mean, ruble is worthless for you. You have to convert it today or 5 years down the line back to USD. I mean, you are losing money. It's a common strategy that at this particular point, when the currency goes down significantly, you stop selling products. This is a legit business strategy. What companies are doing, they are using the legit business strategy, and they are saying, "Oh, we are supporting Ukraine." Guys, that's not happening. Okay, I mean, you need to understand like which companies are really supporting or which companies are not supporting. Okay, same thing. I mean, so even like countries need to understand what's their exposure. I mean, people have that view. The people had the view, okay, we can manage. They try to bluff Putin in a certain way, but now we are saying that countries actually didn't realize or estimated what's their actual exposure to Russia is. I mean, Russia didn't estimated very well what's their exposure or their economy. I mean, everybody was saying Russia is bulletproofing their economy for last 5-6 years to prepare for this. I mean, it didn't stand 5-6 hours. Okay, I mean, what happened in Russia, even in an extreme situation, you cannot imagine that happening in Europe or in US. But people who are leading the countries, they should be aware of it, that what would be that extreme scenario that it could happen, and what pieces in chess has to move, because it's not about like it is very less probability. It's about you do not play chance with very small probability if it can wipe you out. Putin has tried it, Ukraine has tried it, NATO has. The NATO came and they say, okay, yeah, we are thinking to bring it in Ukraine. They try to bluff it that we can even support Ukraine, and that's what kind of poked Putin in a way. And now when they realize they just cannot stop relying on Russia, okay, now I mean, like, yeah, they say, okay, yeah, it's not NATO's war. I mean, so it's a failed strategy. And why it happened? Because people didn't know what their actual exposure is. In business, it matters. You will go bankrupt. It's not like politics that you can still, I mean, the accountability is somebody else. Okay, so foundry is going to be very important in terms of estimating for a lot of companies supply chain risk, in terms of scenario simulation, in terms of upgrading and making a coherent digital transformation moving forward. And yes, companies can opt not to use foundry if they want, but that is done at a cost. And the cost is they are sacrificing critical time and taking risk to build something bespoke, which they don't know is actually going to work or not. It only works on PowerPoints. So let's see how it all plays out.
Do you real quick, do you think the sales force is going to have to sell Gotham right now, or do you think companies or countries are going to come to Palantir as a result of what's going on naturally?
So, I mean, like Gotham, I don't think they need that kind of sales force as they need in B2B. Gotham needs a very strategic kind of sales force. I think people like Alex Karp and some very senior people in company who have very deep understanding of how things work in military context. Okay, and my understanding is they are already connected with these, because the market for Gotham is actually already fixed. It is NATO and its allies. Okay, and since they've been working for a long time, so one way or other way, I mean, people are connected. People know. I mean, in NATO and allies spectrum, they know what Palantir does. It's not like B2B where people just don't know what Palantir does. So the sales force in Gotham versus Foundry is different. One thing, however, is Apollo is something which needs more focus in government arena, because Apollo is not deployed at a scale in government so far this much. So I think that is something which they'll be doing more and more, and especially in these kind of situations where edge use cases are more important to manage the crisis. Back to you guys.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the comment section. And one of the topics that I see keeps coming up is there are other companies that do exactly what Palantir does. And I'll take that. There are definitely companies out there that sell one of two things. They sell you tools to make a product similar to Foundry for your organization, right? They give you the building blocks to make a product like Foundry. 85 to 87% of all of those initiatives, they fail, right? So it's almost like me selling you a car versus me selling you different parts of a car. I'll sell you wheels, I'll sell you the seats, and most of the time, you're never able to get the product that you actually want. You want a fixed product. That's where one of the value propositions for Palantir is, that they're giving you a whole product. they're not just giving you piecemeal things that you're going to have to utilize from different companies and then figure out a way that to get them all to integrate with each other. That's a problem, right? Imagine going to Toyota to buy an engine, Mercedes to buy, the body, and going to Honda to buy, I don't know, the wheels, right? And then making everything fit together. It's hard. It's hard to do it. Not to say that you couldn't do it, but it's stupid. So it's better to just buy the whole car. And that's what Palantir is one of the main things is. So I don't see in my view right now, too many companies have a whole product. They're literally selling people pieces of different products. There are companies right now like C3 AI. I know a lot of people will say, like what's a good comparison for Palantir? And even though C3 AI, their technology is like way lower in terms of use cases and use potential, that would be a competitor. If you look at that perspective, then yes, it looks like Palantir is going to be kind of stuck in a zone where they're not going to be able to really make too many sales. But I can tell you right now, every company is going and doing digital transformation. Every company is trying to figure out data analysis, how to use their data to make operationalized decisions. So the pie is growing every single day. It's the same thing when you look at like electric cars, right? A lot of people are saying, well, there's no market for electric cars. How are you going to sell electric cars to people? Well, guess what? Now that Tesla's come out there, right? Does that mean that Tesla is going to, Tesla's market share is going to diminish like right away? Like, no. Even if Ford and GM comes up with their own cars, the total number of people buying electric cars is going to grow also. So I would probably say this: we are in a cycle just like how cell phones were, where you had products that did the same exact thing, but then there were other people that ended up becoming market leaders and differentiate themselves. And all the ones that couldn't hack it ended up dying out, right? So an example is if you go to year 2003, there was Nokia, there was BlackBerry, there was StarTech. I don't know if you guys remember that. Nextel had some phones, and then you had all these different manufacturers of phones, right? What ended up happening? Apple made a superior product. Those other companies, they couldn't hack it. They eventually died out. They couldn't get enough users to use them. And now we're left with maybe like 2 or 3 major cell phone manufacturers, right? So it's the same thing. I feel like that's right now Palantir is going to have, where you have two verticals that are growing. You have the pie that's growing exponentially because every company is doing data analysis on their data. And now we actually have the ability to do more because of AI, not general AI, but a little bit less than general AI. General AI is like, like you physically talking to another person almost, and they have the ability to independently think. But AI is becoming a more normal thing now. So now a lot of that data can finally be unlocked and utilized in the operational settings. But that pie is growing. So that's one really good thing for Palantir. So it's not just, is Palantir competing for a fixed amount of money? Like, no, they're competing for a pie that's growing every day. That's number one. That's one value proposition that I'll just put out there. The second thing is they have a product that's whole. So it's not like you're buying small pieces of things. So when you're not buying small pieces of things, like bespoke things, as Sachin said before, you have the opportunity to actually do more, right? So that's the example that I would give right now with Palantir. Like, it's very similar to cell phones, where instead of just buying a cell phone and then buying an operating system and then buying some other things, you're getting the entire thing in just one clean package, and hopefully Palantir ends up being that default operating system for companies, and it reaches $1 trillion valuation. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but one of the companies that definitely has a potential to get there is Palantir.
I'm saying it's going to happen. No, I'm not saying it's going to happen. But again, when I was listening to that Carp interview as I was in the car, I was like, it's going to happen.
Okay, Amit Nash.
You know what's so crazy? I was listening to a Gali hyperchange video. Everyone says I look like Gali, by the way. And he was reviewing or I talk like Gali. He was reviewing a Ron Barron Tesla video from 2019, where Ron Barron said by 2030, Tesla will get to $1 trillion. And I was listening to it like, it happened in 2021. Now, obviously, lots of difference. But just to analyze real quick, Sachin, I want to get your thoughts on this. Tesla went to $1 trillion from 2019 predictions because of COVID and just like a demand for EVs soared, right? I think that would be sort of the big thing. and we transitioned a little bit more quickly than we thought we would. These types of black swan events that Palantir and Alex Karp have historically been talking about, if they continue to happen, which it doesn't seem like they're going away anytime soon, and the COVID pandemic was just the first sight of it, there's an accelerated need for the product. I'm not saying it's going to $1 trillion, but I am saying that hyper growth phase, when people thought Tesla would take 10 years to get to $1 trillion, it happened in a year. Palantir could get a little bit quicker to a better growth phase, given the need for products. If all of NATO were to adopt it tomorrow, for example.
The other thing also is it's beaten down to the point right now where even if it gets to, let's say, the Salesforce in 10 years, the Salesforce level of capitalization, which is about 200 billion, you're still looking at a 10x from what it is right now, as long as you're willing to buy and hold, right? Now the thing is, I'm not going to YOLO my entire savings into Palantir, but it does make a meaningful part of it, right? And I think that's what people have to consider. Like, hey, listen, I see this as an industry play. I see this as a company play, and I see this as a value play. For me, this is an industry play. I think Palantir has market leading, an industry leading product. So instead of me buying 10 different AI companies, right, where 8 of them might fail, why not just go with the one that I think is going to succeed, right? That's what I'm
actually
thinking.
Saving the entire Britain's healthcare system, right? That's when the C3
exactly.
AI is brought up. It's just like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Other than that, in other parts of my portfolio, I usually diversify things. Like I'm bullish on lithium, right? So, but the thing is, I don't have enough data on each company to evaluate each company individually. So instead of buying one lithium company or two, I just buy the index for it. But in terms of Palantir, I know they have a good product. I see a lot of stuff. I watch Code Strap videos all the time. So I'm so excited, but I'm like, no, this is the one company I'm definitely going to invest in. So I have 5% of my portfolio in AI because I think AI is going to be big. And I think Palantir is going to be the one that covers that entire 5% of my AI investment.
Okay, so let me reflect on two things like Amit and Kris, you discussed is. First thing is, like Amit mentioned about this black swan events that can completely change the direction of a company. I think there has several events happen, and these events will keep happening. But in one way or other way, Palantir has not been able to make that much use as it should have been. Okay, the reason for that I discussed earlier also, that they underinvested on their sales force, and it eventually came to bite them. When they underinvested on their sales force, they allowed other companies to enter in the B2B arena. And these companies are not going to disappear. There is a permanent damage that Palantir has to accept. They need to outflank this by creating a range of solutions or a range of experience for their customers, where their customers these customers can come back to them. So at this particular point, there are black swan events, but the Palantir growth is actually constrained by themselves. This is why I feel that building a product is more difficult than unlocking this constraint on themselves. This is why I bet on Palantir. Okay, if I have to bet like other companies, can they make a product like Palantir? In theory, yes. But what is the probability of that? What is the probability for Palantir to unlock this constraint on themselves? So this is what my balance is. And I hear these things a lot of time that Palantir is competitive to Palo Alto or CrowdStrike. That's what Jim Cramer was dancing about. And I hearing comments. See, you guys need to understand big data or enterprise OS, and I have said it several times. It's several layers. You need infrastructure, you need legacy, you need all the data layers, data governance, data ingestion, all the data pipelines. You need API management, you need microservices, you need business apps, you need CI/CD, DevOps, you need cybersecurity, you need site reliability. Why you need all of this? Because you need to do prescriptive analytics, predictive, journal, descriptive, self-service BI. You need AI, you need automation, you need robotics, you need operational reporting, you need a lot of operational systems like CRM working, you need API management to manage it, to portal, monitoring, pricing, security. You need behavior analytics, you need advanced threat detection, you need cloud security, you need to do it at a speed in terms of how the data is ingested from the unstructured and structured data streams. You need data anonymization. You need some time to have physical cloud. Palantir can actually provide you physical cloud also if you want. Does Snowflake does it? No. All of it. Does C3 AI does it? No. Does CrowdStrike and Palo Alto does it? No. Does AWS, Microsoft Azure and Google does it? No. So first thing is what Palantir does. Palantir does all of these things and many more these things. Okay. The second thing is how they do it. Okay. One thing is, okay, I mean, C3AI is doing something, 20 more companies are doing something. That's fine. Okay. They have a same breadth of solution, but how they are doing it, that makes a different approach on that part. The third part is that which portion of these layers they are actually focused more. Like, for example, if you go to Google and AWS, so their first focus is that how to bring the clients on the infrastructure. Okay, how do we sell our infrastructure first? Palantir is not focused on infrastructure. Their focus is how do we get clients to work with us on business problems. So guys, I think this is, you need to think in all these three dimensions. What a company does, how it does, and what is the core where they are working. So that's when you put these three things together. I mean, anyone who is saying that Palantir is doing this, so what Snowflake is doing this, guys, I mean, you really need to go and check you need to read things. If Snowflake is doing what Palantir is doing, why Snowflake is not getting $6.5 million from each and every customer from themselves? Why Snowflake is not sitting with the US Defense Department? Why Snowflake was not called when the NHS was in shit and they needed help? So guys, anything you are telling for yourself to self-bias, be it in support of Palantir or be it in against Palantir or any company, guys, if you tell me that a company with a revenue of $69 million is doing exactly same like C3 AI, what Palantir is doing, guys, I mean, you are not even at the level I should even try to explain that how wrong you are. Okay, I just wish you good luck in the investing in big data OS. This is below my level.
Yeah, and I for anyone who's getting offended, or like, I don't think most people are offended, but if you think what Sachin's saying is mean, it's really not. If you just look at the core premise of the argument he's making, C3 AI, Big Bear AI, these are not what Palantir is. Now, Big Bear is at $7, Palantir is at $11. So if you look just at the price, you're like, oh, well, they're both AI data companies, the same. It's like, that is missing a fundamental story that is being presented, which is why we're talking for an hour on this podcast to really explain it more in depth. And I think Sachin's point about why is the NHS not running to Snowflake, right? It's a very simple question. Let's just ask that very simply out loud. Why did the NHS not go to Snowflake, say, hey, you guys have 6,000 customers. Can we be 6,001? And can you guys save us 28%, thousands of patients of wait time in our business? Like, Palantir didn't sell themselves to them. They came to them.
Well, let me explain one thing. The NHS could be using Snowflake. I don't know. I haven't done the research, right? But remember, Snowflake is just one part of a bigger picture. That's the whole point that I'm trying to make, and that everyone needs to realize. Palantir and Snowflake, some people like to think that they're competitors where they're competing against each other, and that's not necessarily the case. Yes and no at the same time, where if, let's say, I wanted to build a digital transformation product, right? And I want to store all my data, I want it to easily be retrievable, I'm going to use a product like Snowflake to send all that data to, so that this way I can take it and use it myself. With Palantir, you can actually use a Snowflake database and then have Palantir run on top and take data from a Snowflake database. They can reach out into Databricks, into all these other things. So the way that I would say this is Snowflake, their biggest competitor is actually AWS, because, you know, they're essentially competing for stuff like that. Palantir doesn't have that level of competition because that's not what they're trying to do. They're not trying to build out an infrastructure. The other thing is, when you really look at, I would say just go look at some Coach-Strap videos to figure out what the difference between Snowflake and Palantir is, and what the value proposition for each is. And one of the reasons why Snowflake has been successful in getting so many customers is because the way that I would express it is, every company right now is trying to do data analytics, right? So Snowflake is saying, well, you know what? We can give you the infrastructure so that you can build your own product, right? And all these companies are saying, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll hire our own data scientists. You know, we'll make a product ourselves. Everyone will love it. And Palantir is saying, look, that's a stupid idea. Don't do that. Guess what? Palantir at one point in its history could have done exactly what Snowflake is doing, right? And said, you know what? We're not going to sell you a whole product. We're going to give you a modular product. Here you go, right? And that's one of the things that Karp on his last thing said we made a mistake. That there was a product that we had that we knew people needed, a fast way to retrieve data, but we didn't really put it out there, right? And I think we made a mistake because they were trying to build a car. Guess what? Sometimes people don't want cars. Sometimes people just want wheels, right? And they want to see what they can do with it. So I just think right now, I know a lot of people are trying to compare Snowflake and Palantir as some kind of competitors. They're not. I think Snowflake is very overvalued. I think a lot of people have these high expectations of Palantir. I mean, that Snowflake is just going to keep growing. Dude, they're on this trajectory of grow. And then guess what? It's going to come down. Once these companies realize that data science is hard and they can't do it themselves, and there's not enough data scientists out there to utilize all these secondary products, they're going to fail. And once they fail, Snowflake is going to, so right now, Snowflake is out there trying to sell its products, right? Or sell stuff. That's why they're spending so much on sales and marketing. And I don't know how much their sales and marketing includes something like credits too. Like right now, I don't know if you guys know, but let's say you go to AWS. AWS, in order to get you to use their product, will give you free shit. They'll give you free compute, right? How much is Snowflake giving? We don't know. And is that included in their sales and marketing? I don't know right now, right? But all I can tell you is if 300 million is your revenue and out of 300 million, almost 60% of it is going towards sales and marketing, do you really think you have a great product? Does Elon Musk spend that much money to sell you a Tesla? He doesn't spend any money to sell you a Tesla, right? Because the product speaks for itself. And I think that's the same thing that's going to happen with Palantir. But the difference is Palantir hopefully realizes that there is some value in bringing knowledge to people, not necessarily sales, but bringing knowledge. So an example, and this is why even CodeStrap and like some of the other people that I've spoken to said they need to have a vibrant developer community where there's people out there that get trained on this stuff, that when they go into an organization, they're like, we need to get Foundry. This, and this are the use cases for it. And let's get Palantir on our side and let's get this product done.
So I see somebody was pumping snow on the chat first, and now he has moved to DataRobot. Now, if you really think DataRobot competes with Palantir, just ask this question to DataRobot Salesforce: how many parallel data pipelines you can actually manage? And if they give you answer more than 2, please come and demonstrate to me. Okay, and then ask the same question to PLTR and see what answer they do, and ask after that is what else PLTR does. See, just by pumping comments in chat that you pump Snow and you pump DataRobot, I mean, talk rational. Okay, it's not. I mean, information is in front of everyone. Okay, so there is no point confusing people here. Okay, one thing we have to understand that Palantir, one of the key issue they have is they need to be better at meeting clients where their clients are today. It's not like this, the clients are here and we can do this. This gap has to be bridged. This has been one of the biggest pain point Palantir had historically. They have acknowledged it. They are trying to be better at it, but they are still not good at it.
Yeah. Well, one thing, going back to what Kris said, and again, this is what I was listening to the Karp interview. He made a really good point that I want to bring up again. Karp said the culture of Palantir and the reason they're so product heavy versus sales heavy, which again, that was a mistake. But if you ask me in the bottom of his heart, I don't think he thinks it's a mistake because I think he still thinks that Palantir is going to 20x. This is the interview where he said Palantir should be 20x. Is because technical people do not wake up in the morning and get ready to go to work for a company when they know they're creating a product that's just going to be sold in some out of the box mechanism by which the sales force is going to completely just take the product and just do blah, 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 and then try to sell it. He said that his point was that technical people, and the reason Palantir has been able to retain them at the highest of levels, which is why the product is so differentiated from a DataRobot, from a C3 AI, from a Big Bear, etc., is because those people feel passionate when they're actually building a product that they know is fundamentally going to change the world or fundamentally have a differentiated impact than everything else. And that's why Snowflake is much bigger, going much faster, but that's why they also have a stronger sales force. And that's also why Snowflake acquired Streamlit, I believe is the name of it, for $800 million. Karp's point was that these big companies, they can only mask the insecurities and weaknesses they have in culture of talent by acquiring other companies. And the acquisitions are very messy and they usually don't work. If you've ever gone through an acquisition process or researched it, it is very difficult to actually acquire a company and make everything be a clean fit. But Karp was saying that is and I'm doing a video on this later, so we'll get more thoughts on it. This is the only way for these companies to have a competitive edge. Whereas at Palantir, they don't need to acquire other companies because the product itself is what they're differentiated for in their value proposition, as Kris was saying. Whereas at Snowflake, they don't have a differentiated product. They have a good sales force. But, and again, they're not a bad company, but they have to acquire other companies to add differentiations to the product. Whereas the product team internally, because of the technical talent that Palantir has, that they're able to retain because of the culture they've created to get them to give a crap about the product, is creating. Now, the market doesn't get that. And there's a lot of reasons the market doesn't get that. But if you understand that story, you can invest in Palantir and I think go to sleep for the next 5 years. If you don't get that story, then you can't.
I don't understand how someone on this chat can say Palantir and DataRobot are competitors when they have a partnership. Their COO was on CNBC. Here, let me just share this, just so that we can stop the FUD.
I think there's people in the comments that now that Palantir community is getting bigger. People in the comments they want to have fun.
Yeah. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Up 25% in the past month and ticking higher today after announcing a new partnership with AI platform DataRobot. The two companies will work together to help solve demand forecasting problems faced by retail business customers. The announcement comes after the FAA hired Palantir to support its aircraft certification and operational safety activities. Palantir COO Shyam Sankar joins us now in a Closing Bell exclusive. Very good afternoon to you, Shyam.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to hit on this partnership with DataRobot, first of all. To what extent is this helping you in an area that you're already working on? I mean, is this not already what you do? Why do you need a partner in this space?
Well, we've been working in the field very closely with DataRobot over the years to deliver value to customers, including throughout the pandemic. And it really marries the best of both products and both companies, our ability to bring together large amounts of disparate data very, very quickly, put that into operational applications for end users, and their ability to bring together the best of AI modeling and put that into the hands of folks who need those predictions on a real-time basis. And as we enter this reopening phase, this is crucial. Retailers had a really tough go of it. How do we help? It kind of made fools of historical heuristical demand forecasts. This is an opportunity for transformation to reopen in a much stronger footing.
Does it also signal that you intend to make a much bigger push into retail and corporate customers in the next few years?
Yeah, our commercial business has been growing very strongly. We had roughly 70% growth last quarter, year over year. We're going to continue investing in the commercial business. We see retail as a key area amongst many others. We're in 40 industries, from energy to mining and financial services to life sciences, and we're continuing to invest in all of them.
So just on this deal, Shyam, still, what does it do to the potential market size and the potential reach of customers that you can get? Does it widen it? And if so, by how much?
I think it expands it dramatically. The key thing here, there are really two key things. One is time to value. How can you get AI to make sense and have an economic impact on your business quickly? That's one piece of it. The other piece of it here is offering end-to-end solutions that are highly opinionated, that build on the back of the 15 years of R&D that we've really done, and getting those tools into the hands of the frontline factory worker, the person who's otherwise installing rivets, and keeping it beyond the confines of just the back office data scientist.
So,
you always hear it at the end. Shepard Smith here.
Okay, so the one thing is, which is important, like people, that why two service company actually go into a partnership. There are two dimensions for that. The first dimension is that you need wider market and access to clients. That is Palantir position, because they didn't have the sales force. DataRobot has a better sales force and reach. So why they need Palantir? Because they need to robust their solution further. They have certain issues that how they deliver their solutions to customer, and customers are asking for better pipeline management. Okay, so two companies are coming together because they are helping each other in that way. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Palantir need companies that can help them to reach clients which they are not chasing at this particular time. And DataRobot needs solution which they cannot develop in time, and they can actually use modules coming out of Foundry to help it. That is why this is strategic partnership is. I mean, if there is a view that DataRobot is a competition for Palantir, yeah, I think let's wait few years, we find out. I mean, why discuss and agree on everything now? I mean, whether Snowflake is a competition or not, I mean, eventually we'll know. I mean, I started doing internet in '96. There was no Google. There was Alta Vista. There's Lycos. There was Yahoo. There was MSN. A lot of things were there those days. Okay, and when the Google came, I mean, the first question a lot of people asked, and I asked, like, do we really need another search engine? Okay, and dude, I mean, this is what kind of weird search engine is this? I mean, if you have seen the old web pages of search engines, they used to be like a catalog. Okay, so saying that, yeah, I think let's play it out now in the real world. Why to fight about it? We have a view, and let's find it out.
I want to read this comment by Mehdi right here. I think I think it has some merit to it. I've been investing for a while now. When the market misses things like this, it tends to have the biggest run once the market realizes it, and they will eventually just got to be patient. Sachin, you've been investing for longer than all of us. How do you kind of feel about the statement in general, outside of just Palantir?
No, I think I right, and that's what I say. I mean, that's why this is scope for my investing. I mean, before I invested in Palantir, I studied Palantir clients. I studied Palantir, what they do, what's good, what's bad in that. Okay, and you know, there is a reason why companies miss it. Okay, like for example, first thing is there is a way we look at company. You know, we want everything positive about company. You know, by the time everything is positive about company, Amazon become a $3,000 stock. Okay, so you have to decide what you are betting on, and it is driven by your world of future also. And I have discussed, like Kris mentioned, that we are not going to have enough data scientists. So the question is, if you're not going to have enough data scientists, how people are actually going to solve that problem? So one of the way to solve that problem is that you build a model, but you're not going to use a lot of data engineers and data scientists to maintain those models. So use something like an auto ML ops, which your DataRobot does for you. Another is that you use a company like Dataiku, which gives a tool set to a lot of ordinary people who can do 80-90% data science by themselves. They are two different versions of future. The third version of future is that are you using data scientists at all? I mean, at the end of the day, you need insights, you need actions, and you need to understand what scenarios are. So if you have an enterprise AI enabled that can do it for you, you actually remove the equation of data scientists altogether. Now, what is your version of future? Or another version is that you will eventually found this many data scientists. Okay, so you will invest based on your version of future. I mean, like for example, people who invested in Tesla, they invested with their version of future that EV is eventually is going to be the mainstream. People who did not, who kept saying that EV is not going to be mainstream, and it includes every ICEO. Okay, every ICEO, they eventually have to eat their own words. So if you wanna invest for longer time, you need to have a view what world will look like. Okay, if you get wrong, you try to go back and see that why I got wrong. Okay, I mean, like market and mainstream finance media will always miss innovative and disruptive company, because these people, they do not do business strategy. They have not spent time in industries. They have spent time only in Excel sheets talking to each other on Wall Street. I mean, I learned about Zumia when I was in Nigeria. Before that, I never cared about Zumia. I learned about Grab and Shopee because I'm in Malaysia. Okay, so if you're not on ground, I mean, I saw one of my clients spending $100 million on Palantir, and I said, dude, what's going on? I mean, I have never seen a company spending $100 million on a single company. There's something happening out there. Okay, and a lot of people met me in different roles, and they say, oh yeah, we do exactly same what Palantir does, but we do it at a cheaper cost. And then you say, okay, you do everything what Palantir does, I want this thing done. They say, oh, we don't do things A, B, C, and E. We only do D. So it's very easy to say that I'm like this and I'm like that. But guys, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about delivery. If Palantir delivers, it wins. If it doesn't deliver, somebody else wins. It's straightforward.
So guys, let's kind of like stop the Palantir for now. Let's just talk about some of the macro level events that may end up helping Palantir, because I think we're just beating a dead horse at this point. I don't know if you guys agree or not.
I agree, but one thing I want to say is the insider sells real quick. We can spend like 2-3 minutes on this, then we can go to macro. So a lot of people have been asking about insider sells. Now, there's two things that have been going on with insider sells, and you can see this all in the 10Ks that are being filed. 4 C-suite executives, I don't have the name on me, but 4 of the C-suite executives sold shares to cover tax withholding for RSU vesting. This is basically what Karp did all of last year, where he was selling so many sets of shares. It's because he had options on shares that he's granted every 10 years. He has to buy those options. To buy those options, you need money to buy those shares and those options and those RSUs, which means you also have to pay taxes once you buy those. That means you have to sell shares to be able to cover the taxes. That is what most C-suite executives have been doing. One of the C-suite executives, Alexander Moore, he's a director, he sold some of his shares for profit. Karp, here's the biggest thing, and this information comes from TJ. He's on Twitter. I'll probably leave him in the description after this is done. He's really good at like the numbers and financials of Palantir. Karp has not filed a Form 4, and a Form 4 is what every insider of a company has to file with the SEC when they sell shares. This is significant because it implies that he may be, now we may get this Form 4 later, we don't know, but as of now, he may be paying for the shares that he has to buy out of his pocket through his own withholdings, because he's not filing a Form 4 to sell shares to be able to get the money to then buy those options. Why is that significant? Because that means that Karp is not trying to sell shares because he's already sold a lot of shares and he wants to hold on to the shares that he has. In general, it's a bullish sign that he doesn't want to get rid of any shares, especially not at $10. So for anyone who had insider selling questions, that is the truth about what's going on with insider selling. Now, are we going to get a form from Karp that says he sells some shares? Maybe, and we'll see what happens when that happens. But as of now, that form has not been filed yet, and as a result, that means that Karp is not selling shares. He's paying with it with his own money. Cool. Kris, Kris, you can lead the conversation of the macro event. I pinned this one macro question, but take it where you want.
Yeah, I think right now we are in a very precarious macro environment, right? I think there's a lot of questions around how many rate rises is the Fed going to do? How is that going to end up affecting valuations? That's why if you look at it, all these companies, they've been decimated. Like the entire tech industry has been decimated. But that's a good thing. I think it's a great thing because this is the time where investors really who can actually do the research, get some high quality assets, buy them up at a super cheap price. This is where you make money. This is the equivalent of the year 2000 when all these big tech companies all failed. And, then the ones that were left were really strong companies. That's what's going to happen now. I think 2022 is probably going to be a very rough year for tech in general for growth. But the companies that do survive it and that still build that value proposition will end up doing very well into the future. And I think Palantir is definitely going to be one of them. They're free cash flow positive. They don't have any debt on the balance sheet. They're still growing their revenues really fast. They have tons of backlog in terms of contract backlogs. They're still signing partnership deals. So like I said, a lot of people say that they're long-term investors, but they're actually speculators. This is the time to prove yourself whether you're a speculator versus an investor. And like I said, for me, I've just been DCAing. That's been my strategy from a long time with Palantir. So every time a lot of people, they want to just buy a big lump sum and hope that it 20x's tomorrow morning. That's not how investing works. Investing works over a long period of time, so that's where I stand with it.
Sachin? You're muted, Sachin.
See, my view on macro is very simple. See, I expect that Fed has to do some sort of ceremonial price rise. I also expect inflation to stay high because of all the energy thing going on. I think people will now see what oil does to them. I also expect oil price to keep rising. Okay, no one predicts oil price. This is just my view because the reason is that it's inelastic. Okay, it's already in the territory where the swings are going to be quite heavy. And to be fair, nothing is done by anyone to actually reduce the supply demand pressure. So there is no reason that it should stop increasing. So that's a real risk. Okay, supply chain risks are going to be quite serious because first, it was already a bottleneck. Second, that given the situation, countries would like to store as much as possible critical supplies. Okay. Another thing is because a lot of vessels with the Russian flags or Russian ties are in soup because no one knows what the Europe and US sanctions will do to them. So there is a bit of concern on that part. The stock will only rise. Okay, even if some of these issues will resolve, I don't think the stock will rise too much by that as well, because the damage on stock is though done by it, but to rise it again, it needs company performance to come back. Okay, if companies are creating dollars and revenues with zero debt and high operating margin, guys, stock will rise against all kind of headwinds. Okay, yes, it's beaten because of it, but a lot of stocks that has been beaten, guys, maybe half of those stocks will never rise again to what they were. Okay, can Palantir be one of those stocks? Yes, Palantir could be one of those stocks if it doesn't get its act right. There is no shame in saying that. Okay, do I see that happening? I don't see it happening, in my opinion, as a very likely event, but you can never rule it out. The second is like Palantir has to ensure that they deliver more than they are promising in guidance. As long as they are doing that quarter and after quarter, it will go higher and it will keep on going higher. This is how the great companies are built, and Palantir has to prove its mettle in that. I think it's straightforward and simple. Back to you, Amit.
One thing before you can take it, Amit. How close do you guys think Palantir is to GAAP profitability? Because for me, I think 1.5, maybe 2 years, and you're going to start to see GAAP profitability. So many people were, and this is the same argument that people made against Tesla. Oh, if without those carbon credits, Tesla would do nothing. Well, guess what? What's your argument now? How much cash are they generating? How much net income are they generating? But guess what? Go buy Tesla stock now. Oh no, it's overvalued. Okay, so basically you were saying when it wasn't overvalued, when it wasn't generating net income, it was overvalued at the time, and now it's even more overvalued. Come on, guys. So this is where I would say, and the other thing is, if you look at what Karp said on Q4, he's like, look, we're right there in terms of GAAP profitability. That is our next goal, right? Your CEO is out there saying, we're not taking this, this situation for granted where people are thinking that, hey, everyone's just going to be diluted into nothingness. They're taking it seriously. They understand that we have to be GAAP profitable. The CEO has come out and said it. Now it's up to him to hit that target. Any CEO that comes to me and says, look, our targets are to get to a point where we're GAAP profitable, that's great. And then on top of that, the institutional money hasn't even flowed in yet. Most of the holdings right now are still retail. So once these other once these institutionals, they see that it's GAAP profitable and it's still growing and has high margin, dude, they're going to be loading the boat. And when they're loading the boat, you're going to be competing against a guy who has $1 billion. Good luck with that.
And he can trade in pre-market, after hours, and dark pools also.
Yeah, and options. They can end up buying a ton in options. They could buy up different instruments on the secondary market too. So it's like I said, by the time there's so many people right now that are like, oh, I missed the Tesla run up. Well, yeah, you missed it because guess what? You weren't even willing to buy some when it was much, much lower. And here's the thing. I'm not saying take your entire savings and throw it into Palantir. I'm saying that, hey, if you think this company has the potential to go up really up there, you should be looking for companies like Palantir that have the ability to ability to change the world, and that's where I say I think the profitability, it might even happen this year. Who knows? If they sign the right contracts, if right now the war in Ukraine, you really think that like the entire business on Gotham's side has been built to deal with situations like the Ukraine situation? You don't think the U.S. government right now is scrambling to say, here's the money, give us the satellite information, give us the data analytics that we need to make a good judgment decisions, right? And this is where Palantir is probably leveraging like, oh, you want our help? It's going to cost you. And the government right now is just going to have to pay. So
I think Sachin, go ahead. You got it.
See, I think the government contracts and procurement, the way it is structured, I think the guidelines is already there, like what it will cost to hire what kind of service. I think this is exactly what Palantir fought in the early days. In terms of GAAP profitability, I think what Alex Karp said in his address was like 18 to 24 months. But my understanding is that they will try to do it a little early, just to give everybody a pleasant surprise if they can. Okay. What is more important at this particular point is that, see, even if you look like, and I actually was covering with one discussion yesterday, that why I think it's important to invest in companies who has cash. Okay, if you have zero debt and if you have cash, you have longer lifeline to actually get your go-to-market strategy right. Okay, now what we are seeing also that as a lot of companies have boosted their valuation in the recent run, and now they have to actually show like why the valuation was so high. And like for example, I've said it earlier as well that Snowflake was solving a piece of problem, very critical piece of problem, in a certain way, which was very simple, required very little change management, and it was popular. Based on that, people have projected certain valuation for it, certain revenue growth for it, but they do not have product to cover that breadth. So they only have one option, is to grow vertically by inorganic manner. That means need to acquire companies, and that's what they are doing. Now these companies and these products have to be reintegrated back into the main company. Okay, you will end up with some goodwill or a lot of goodwill on your balance sheet. You will run out of cash, because if you do not use your own cash, you have to raise debt. I mean, it's not zero sum game. If you do something, you need to, and these products, when they were initially developed, they were not built to work with each other. They had some connectivity that was different parts. So somebody has to ensure that that these things actually gel together in a very cohesive way. See, the data, engineering, and decision. Engineering is the bottleneck. The system has to work directly from data to decision. Okay, that's the end game. If you are focused too much on getting everything passing through engineering, at the end of the day, guys, we do not have that many data engineers and data scientists, and any company that is working on that approach for long term, yeah, I think it's already lost the war. But we are seeing just the progress of final rights.
One last thing, Amit, can you share my screen real quick? So this is what I'm just going to show you guys really quickly, okay? These are just the number of job postings recently that have been coming out for Palantir, for people with Palantir skills, okay? The number of analyst positions are crazy, all right? There's pages and pages of them just coming up right now, and they all require Palantir in some level of capacity to be training. Counterterrorism analyst, senior data analyst, every single thing is requiring, look at this, experience with Power BI, Python, and Palantir, right? Threat investigators, right here. Same thing. Booz Allen, defense research analyst requires experience with Palantir. All these things just goes to show you that this is a real product, and it's going to be something that the government is going to be using more and more. This one is Reston, Virginia. Reston, Virginia is, let's see, right here, experience with SAS, Python, Argus. Does it say, hey, we need experience with any other what is that thing called? AI tool that works with the government? Does it say, oh, you need experience with Big Bear AI? No, it all says Palantir. So all I'm saying is the government revenue, it's coming. All right. You look at the number of job openings there are for people that need Palantir experience on the government side, or at least on a systems integrator side. That is going to tell you how much work is coming towards Palantir, how much money is coming in Palantir's revenue bucket eventually in the future.
I want to say one thing, then I want to talk about this DPO IPO conversation going on in the chat, because I just listened to Karp talk about it. One of the things Kris said before about Tesla, and I missed out on Tesla, and I had Tesla and I sold it for like a loss, like an idiot, right? Like I missed out on Tesla, and it kills me to this day that I missed out on it. But the reason for it was because I thought it was overvalued when it was like a, I don't know, $200 billion company, because I didn't understand how to make sense of valuations at its core. So what Kris is saying is like, now I can't buy Tesla at $5,000 post split. I literally can't do it, because I need to 10x my money. You know, I'm 24. By 34, I want to get a 10x. I don't think Tesla's gonna be a $10 trillion. Now it might be, but it's a much more riskier bet than when it was a $50 billion company to become a $1 trillion company. What we're doing right now, and what we're doing with our content on YouTube, is we are trying to pick stocks. We are not an index ETF type of YouTubers, right? So when you're picking stocks, that's partly the reason why that's my answer to a lot of people say, why do you make all these videos on Palantir? Because why would I make 17,000 videos on every other stock? You're never going to understand a stock or a company that well unless you actually go that deep into it. The thing about the Palantir community is we've gone so deep onto this company, either we're going to be right or we're going to be wrong. But damn it, we've done a lot of research to come to a reasonable hypothesis for why we think we can be correct. And that means that we get the benefit of going in before the CNBC Tyler guy who puts a sell rating on Palantir at $11 gets to come in. Because there were those same analysts, please do not forget this. I was watching Ghali's Hyperchange video from 2018 where he was debating hedge fund managers, just like Sachin is talking about, that were shorting Tesla at like less than $100 billion market cap. There were those same people. These people are out there. They are not doing the work that we are doing. Am I saying we're all going to be right? No. But the amount of research we're creating and the due diligence we are doing is what will reward us in the long term if we are correct, based upon knowing stuff that regular analysts are not going to know. And that's the whole reason why we do these podcasts in the first place.
I mean, my reasoning is very simple for me. Who I'm going to listen? The guys who is giving message because he has listened a certain CEO, or the guy who is telling the CEO what to say and what to do? I think I'm going to listen always the guy who's telling CEOs what to do and how to do. And most of the time that guy is me. So I trust myself.
Can we talk about this DPO IPO thing? Can someone explain why Palantir did a DPO versus an IPO? First, what is an IPO? What is a DPO? And why did Palantir do a DPO over an IPO? I think maybe Sachin can explain something.
See, in a very layman words, like if you remember, like one of the things which Karp said, that when they went for public, it was not as they planned. Like, I mean, it was kind of, they were situation where they decided to go very fast. Like, okay, we have this much timeline, and we are, so their event of going public was waited for a long time. Okay, Palantir wanted to hold it as private as long, but then what happened that starting 2014, their valuation got stagnated. Okay, and it stayed stagnated for a long time. Ideally, you would have a valuation boost in that long before you go for IPO. Okay, so that was one reason. Another thing is that they also realized that they cannot create a lot of new equity because there is already a lot of existing equity that needs liquidity. Okay, they need to provide some liquidity for existing shareholders because of all this lockdown. Okay, if you go with the investment bank point of view, I mean, they would still like you to do as much as possible to do an IPO because that helps them. And Palantir was not looking to raise a lot of cash.
Can you explain that real quick? Why does an IPO help Morgan Stanley? Like, what benefit do they get from that?
Because they underwrite the company's stock. They need to create stocks and new equity. They get like 5-7%, 7.5% is kind of a standard that they get. They need to boost. They write the ratings for it. So for example, like now I'm helping one of my clients to actually enter in IPO just before it. But I mean, we do not have any conditions to liquidate. I mean, we do not have a lockup period because the time we are entering in. So if stock is being it does well, which could, I mean, depending on how the analysts write reporting, I mean, it's pretty much like a good money in a short amount of period. And people who are writing this, they will make money as well. So, I mean, the more the scope of investment banks, more the scope of underwriting a company and its equity for an investment bank, more the money they make. A lot of money they make is free money, actually. They are not taking the risk you are taking on the stock. See what happened with Rivian. Okay, I mean, yeah, I mean,
can you explain what underwriting means? Underwriting means like they provide a foundation for the stock to be able to get higher when it goes public?
Yeah, I mean, in the most layman word, underwriting is a kind of a financial evaluation that we trust, and we, based on this evaluation, this is the kind of valuation, this is what the company's forecast look like. It's a kind of an endorsement. Okay, and they get paid for it.
Gotcha.
Okay. It's, I mean, I'm trying to simplify it too much, okay, but that's how it, I mean, in principle it works. So what happened, like for example, when the Rivian came, there was a boost, and then people say, oh yeah, we need 165 as my target, then 165 went to 116, then 116 went to now. I mean, people like me, I mean, we had an idea that it will eventually happen. This is why Puru went and he shorted Rivian right from the starting. So you guys need to understand that if you think that financing world is fair, yeah, guys, I mean, you are in the wrong business. There are people with information. There are people who have better understanding. There are people who have better way to see companies. There are people who have better strategic thinking to evaluate situations and see between lines. and these are the people who are going to make money. And you like it or you don't like it, the fact is a lot of people make money in stocks because in general economies does well, and you pick companies and most of these companies goes up. But if you really want like doing transformational investing, yeah, you really need to upgrade your skill set. There is no other substitute for that.
Real quick before Kris goes, Jacob's comment, they underwrite and get a premium on the shares they get and then immediately flip them to retail on the secondary market. This is what happened with Airbnb. Airbnb is a $100 billion company right now. Airbnb was IPO'd at $633 a share, and I think it ran up to like $130 that day. And the Airbnb founders, when they were asked about it, they were kind of pissed off, even though they were trying to hide it. They were like, well, JP Morgan said 63 was a fair valuation, and then we get to 160 on our first day. It's like, well, if you had IPO'd at 160, Airbnb would be a lot more valuable, and the founders would have gotten a lot more wealthier. But these banks, they want to get a lot of value out of you. And as Sean was saying in the chat, the reason Teal DPO'd and Carp DPO'd is because Palantir has always said, and they've explicitly said, screw you to Wall Street, because they believe the organic growth and the numbers will force Wall Street to buy versus creating spectacles for Wall Street to give you good reviews and then buy, via an IPO.
The other thing is these banks have clients that they have, right? That they want to say, hey, look what I can do for you. I can get you into this IPO at a really discounted price. Like, it's going to shoot up in a very short period of time. So I'll get you in at a really good price. So guess what? In terms of managing clients, this is great. That's why these banks do these IPOs, right? So that they can pick and choose who it is. Usually when these IPOs come out, especially the ones that are really popular, right? You need to have an inside connect at the big banks to get you in for good deals. Otherwise, you won't be able to. You'll have to buy them on secondary on the market after IPO. So
I'll tell you a real incident that happened with me recently is, so I got a message from somebody in network. I mean, I do private investing, and they said, oh, do you want to buy a block of Paytm share before the IPO goes? And there was like a lot of positive report about it. And I was thinking like, okay, why somebody wants to sell me a block of Paytm if it is going to be so good? So I stayed away from it. I mean, Paytm IPO'd, and we all know what happened with that. So these people actually know a lot of time that how to, like, whether the stock is there's a momentum at the IPO going up or not. And yeah, you just cannot trust a lot of these things. Okay, I mean, this is how the world is. I mean, they will allow you to buy Bitcoin, but they will not allow you to buy shares in private companies. And what is happening, there's a lot of private money, and companies are staying longer private for, like, I mean, Stripe was 152 in the secondary last I checked. I was checking a recently block. Somebody was even quoting $220 billion. So SpaceX shares have traded 115. Guys, how long? I mean, you'll wait. So there is a bias, and the world of investing is asymmetric. Okay, so if you get completely swallowed by the opinions of street, yeah, man, the street is not working for you. They're working for themselves. So just be smart from that point of view. Back to you guys.
Yeah, and also there's another part that people also have to understand, that these things are changing and evolving. There's a channel, Everything Money, that has been pushing Alibaba based on past performance. They're like, oh, Alibaba did this much last year and the year before, so of course they're going to do this much next year. But I'm going to share my screen real quick and just show you guys what happened to them. Share screen, window, and same thing. This is one that Charlie Munger was.
You gotta. Oh, here it is. Okay, got it.
There you go. Charlie Munger was saying, oh, Alibaba, we should invest. Look at what happened to their revenue growth. Went from 63%, 33, 29, and then look at this, 9%. Their net income, everything dropped off. All the equations in the world that they had, that Alibaba was going to be this giant company. Guess what? They made the wrong moves in China, and boom, now they got sliced, right? So it just goes to show you that sometimes even people that are like, oh my God, I can predict everything in the future, there are events that can come around that can throw your entire thesis off. And the exact opposite can happen, where you think that this is a shitty company and certain things just work in a certain way, and boom, things go skyrocketing. Look at how many of the energy companies right now that have done dramatically well. Who would have guessed a year and a half, 2 years ago that the Russians were going to invade Ukraine? Well, maybe Palantir knew. Maybe Alex Karp knew, because Alex Karp was like, listen, we're in for some bad times. I don't know how he knew, maybe he couldn't outright say it. Maybe Palantir does have government contracts and NSA work. Maybe they saw this coming. Who knows? Maybe that's why they bought gold.
Well, it's Kris. Kris, this is why we do this. This is why we do this podcast, because the next thing I was going to share is this tweet I just liked the other day, or just like 3 hours ago. On August 17, 2021, in preparation for a black swan, here is what Palantir did and has no debt. Coincidence, or is their software actually working for them? This is when they bought $50 million of gold. Now, I'm not trying to be super conspiratorial here. That's not the point of it. But damn it, it's interesting. It's like, why are these guys buying gold months before the entire market tanks? And gold, I'm not saying gold is going to the moon or anything, but it's definitely a nice little hedge right now, given what's going on with oil. Sachin, any thoughts on that? I think we'll wrap it up in like 10 minutes. Any thoughts on Palantir's ability to kind of be ready for these moments and have no debt on their balance sheet and use stock-based comp instead? Because debt right now, with interest rates rising and them being a growth stock and them DPOing, we might have the share price at like $6 versus $10 if they had debt.
I think it is important to also notice that which other company has gold on their balance sheet. I mean, I don't recall any. So what we are seeing is Palantir is trying to make moves which are actually very different. We saw in the case of strategic investment, they went with a SPAC, with a very frontier kind of mainstream, not so mainstream companies. So they are making some bets which are very different from rest of the companies, and they make it very clear they are making these bets based on their view of the future, and their view of the future is that the world is going to be a volatile place, at least for now, before either it becomes utopian or it becomes dystopian. Okay, and they are just want to play their role in that to ensure that if they stand for Western democracy and Western values, that how well they are going to protect for it. So it is clear. I mean, I don't expect Palantir to know a lot of things what government knows, okay, because they don't mine the data what the government is mining in their softwares. But I do expect like these people are having and discussing with Palantir. So somebody from a senior guy, and he says, okay, is it possible to build a use case where we can predict the probability of a certain event, political event? And then somebody will say, okay, how? Let's try. And that you build a use case, and then you get a feedback that, yeah, I mean, the case was good. So you start getting an idea, as even in an indirect way as a CEO, that this is something on politicians or defense mind nowadays. That means they are expecting something to happen, which is going to change how the strategic commands look like. So getting an inference is something, I think what Alex was getting. He probably was getting these kind of requests and demands a lot. Okay, that could have triggered. And also, I mean, in a simple way, like even if why they bought gold. Okay, there are three reasons I mentioned earlier as well. Like one is like, if you expect that the currency you are doing the business is going to be impacted severely in a flash crash or some sort of event, you need to prepare for it. Okay, that is one. So gold could be one hedge for that. The second thing is that they were dealing with clients who wanted some sort of bank guarantee that you can really deliver solution to us even if the world goes to end kind of situation, because you are helping us in this kind of a front end scenario. So they said, okay, what is that? Said, okay, we can have a gold. We can put it in a kind of a storage where we can have a joint custody. Okay, that
why would that make clients feel more at ease?
See, the thing is, like, if they are relying on Palantir and they say that Palantir doesn't have capability to function or pay to their own employees, that means the client itself is at risk. Like a lot of time people say, like you say, okay, oh, I'm preparing for the end of world, so I have gold. Other person say, I'm preparing for the end of world, but I have rifle so that I can steal the gold from the people who have gold. So it's about your view of the future. Okay, so Palantir is a very opinionated company. Okay, it's not like there are few companies who will drop pant in front of everyone. Okay, Palantir is say that we have certain opinions about future. Our product, our solutions for client is actually geared towards it. Okay, whether their opinion for future is right or wrong, that will play a large role in their success. Okay, and as investors, people who are long and short will have to face the consequences of it, and industry as a sector also has to face a consequence of it. Because if you see in terms of pure data companies, Palantir is probably the only company that is going to reach $2 billion revenue in the year 2022. So it doesn't matter you love it or you hate it, it's a major player now. It's been used by major companies. It's been used by major institutions. So it has a mark. Okay, and it is working in a ways which is very different from a lot of conventional companies. So the growth in Palantir is going to be volatile. It's not going to be very systematic as we have seen in a lot of other companies. It is something different. Okay, we will find out soon.
So there's one thing I was very critical of last quarter when some of these people on say.com were talking about it, but I'm kind of coming around to the idea now. So the idea was, would Palantir consider doing share buybacks? And I was like, that's so stupid. They're still early. But let me tell you, if the price drops enough because of these macro level events, that might not be such a bad idea to buy up some of those outstanding shares and reduce the share count. So just as any company should at the same time be willing to do that, because guess what? You're sitting on $2.5 billion of cash. You're still generating free cash flow. So guess what? You have that excess capacity where you can take maybe 400, 500 million, right? And buy up a good portion of the outstanding shares. Not only does that support your share value, right? But remember, if your employees are being compensated in stock and shares, that means you're also supporting your own employees, right? You don't want to necessarily, it's almost like you're rewarding your employees by taking the excess cash and using it towards boosting the price a little bit. So right now, I would say all these tech companies out there that their prices have been hit, their stock has been hit, if they have free cash flow, right now is a good time to use it, especially if inflation is going to be degrading that cash flow at a 7% rate anyway. So that's what I would say. So I think the idea of share buybacks seemed ridiculous, but who knows? Maybe it's not as ridiculous as you think.
I mean, at this price, actually, it's a fair strategy. I mean, it needs still a lot of guts to think about it because it's very counterintuitive. But I would agree it's a fair strategy. The reason for that is that, see, Palantir has a lot of cash and Palantir is deploying cash at a certain rate. But Palantir rate of cash deployment or capital deployment is not that great. Their result of capital deployments are great, but they do it with a lot of scrutiny. So they are not able to deploy a lot of capital at large. I think that's their constraint. So in that particular case, if a stock is down, I mean, it is, and if they consider that it is down quite a lot in terms of fair value, I would say, it makes sense to do a bit of buyback.
Okay. Sean brings up a point in the chat. He says, Kris, the analysts would decimate them. I mean, the floor with a buyback. Too small. The returning cash needs to be focused on customer acquisition costs and net retention rate expansion.
No, I agree. I totally agree. Like I said, it's just a thought, especially if Palantir drops to, let's say, $5 for some reason, right? And your market cap is $10 billion and you have 2.5 sitting in cash right now. I'm sure that you have expansion needs, but dude, trust me, you'll never get the chances of you being able to expense an entire year's worth of operating cash flow and doing buybacks would be crazy. You could reduce down 5% of the float if your stock drops enough. So that's what I'm saying. Like, and they just, I agree though, the cash should be going more towards CAC, right? And customer acquisition costs. But hey, listen, if the stock drops, the stock drops enough, it's your fiduciary responsibility to make that investment, And like I said, the return on that capital could be much higher because the price is so low, So instead of investing just in expanding the sales force, right? If it gives you the opportunity to grow not as fast and be able to still command a higher valuation because your stock has been taken down. I mean, like I said, it's just a thought. I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know.
I mean, Palantir has been a very unconventional company. It will always do things which will leave street perplexed. So what it will do is, I don't know, but my view is like that their capital deployment has to improve. And like I said, their returns on capital deployment is not bad, but the rate of capital deployment has to be better. Okay, back to you, Amit.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. We covered a lot of topics. I think the one thing we didn't talk about was Kramer, but I think the core thing that everyone knows is he was saying buy Palantir at 29. Now it's at 12. He thinks it's like CrowdStrike. He thinks it's a cybersecurity stock. I think It's sad because Kramer is the guy when it comes to finance and CNBC. If you just get into the world of finance and the stuff he's spewing, it's bad take after bad take. I haven't seen a year in which it's been these many bad takes. So I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts on that.
See, Kramer to me is very unreliable guy, and Kramer to me is a salesman of Wall Street CEOs. Okay, because I have seen him pumping stocks and companies which were toxic. Okay, so
he was on his knees when he was interviewing the Snowflake CEO. That's all I'm gonna say. Because
see, if you are going to do this, you will not give all 100% bad advice. You will give 20% advice or 80% advice at times, which looks very reasonable and good. Okay. Sometimes what you do is you give all kind of advice about stock, and when stock does any move, you say, "Oh, I said this." Okay. And the guy actually tried to lie several times on channel. I remember I was watching this and somebody has quoted him on Bear Stearns, and then he went and said, "Oh, and I never said it. I didn't do it." Then the guy showed him the video, and then he was like caught in the moment. So yeah, I don't trust Jim Cramer. Okay, and what he does, why he does. I mean, to be fair, any analyst, any report that comes from analyst, long or short, has never changed my thesis about a company ever. Okay, so I don't think that is happening in this case. I don't expect Wall Street love for Palantir, but I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm in to make money. I'm not here for Wall Street love. Yeah, back to you guys.
I was trying to find that clip of Kramer.
I was trying to
tell.
I think I have it.
By Lehman?
I have it.
Yeah.
Oh no, not by Lehman. I got the even better one.
Yeah.
It's this will be the last thing we show, guys. Then we're out. It was John. This should be the one. This was when he confronted him about shorting stocks, I believe.
Yeah, it's like manipulating. It's not like shorting. It's about manipulating market in after hours and pre-market.
And what it is. Look, we're both snake oil salesmen to a certain extent.
I'm not disagreeing.
But we do label the show as snake oil here. Isn't there a problem selling snake oil as vitamin tonic?
I think that there are two kinds of people. There are people who come out and they make good calls and bad calls.
The difference is not good call, bad call. The difference is real market and unreal market. Let me show you. This is you ran a hedge fund.
Yes, I did for many years.
A lot of times when I was short at my hedge fund and I was positioned short, meaning I needed it down, I would create a level of activity beforehand that could drive the futures. I would encourage any.
Notice what that means when he's saying he's creating a level of activity before. That's manipulation, right?
What an asshole, dude.
That's manipulation. All right.
Anyone who's in the hedge fund need to do it because it's legal, right? And it's a very quick way to make money. No one else in the world would ever admit that, but I wouldn't care.
That's right, and you can say that here.
I'm not going to say it on TV.
I understand you want to make finance entertaining, but it's not a game.
Don't you want guys like me who have been in it to show the shenanigans? What else can I do?
You knew what the banks were doing, and yet we're touting it for months and months. And so now to pretend that this was some sort of crazy once-in-a-lifetime tsunami that nobody could have seen coming is disingenuous at best and criminal at worst.
I want kangaroo courts for these guys. I really do. I want indictments. We've not seen any indictments. Where's the indictments for AIG?
These guys at these companies were on a Sherman's march through their companies, financed by our 401k. And they burned the house down with our money and walked away rich as hell.
Bro, it was Meet Kevin before Meet Kevin became a thing.
It was and I think that clip just goes to show it's hard to trust people like that. Sachin, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, fair. To be fair, I like Meet Kevin. I mean, the only complaint I ever had was, if you build a brand on something, you have to stay consistent with it. I think what he did was he kind of flip-flopped, and the way he came after that was, first reaction was he tried to justify, then he tried to have this kind of like a panic mode, and now the market has gone down. He's trying to re-justify the action. I think, it didn't come across very well, but to be fair, I really like the guy and what he does, how he does it. I mean, you don't have to like everything about someone. I think I'm not a woke person, so I don't have to be like 100% on this side or 100% on that side. I can like someone and can admire someone, yet I can criticize one or two things I don't like about him. But overall, I think what he has done as for community in general, I think he has made community better than what it was before when he started his channel.
By the way, I was just kidding about that. Meet Kevin. Actually, believe it or not, I would trust Meet Kevin more than I trust Kramer. Because at least with Meet Kevin,
I totally agree.
with Meet Kevin, he's telling you why he's doing what he's doing. And he even, like I said, the way that he explains things in simpler terms, he's not. Everyone has to have a little bit of gimmicky stuff. But I mean, if you look at Jim Cramer, boo-boo-booyah! Like, dude, stop that shit. You're telling me I'm supposed to listen to you and your fucking catchphrase is booyah? Like, come on, guy.
All right, that's it. Went for almost 2 hours. Thank everyone for showing up. Really, really appreciate it. Please subscribe to Sachin and Kris and myself if you are not. The links are in the description. Follow us on Twitter. We cover Palantir. We cover stocks. We cover energy. We cover the things that you guys want to hear from. We talk all day on Twitter, and we will see you guys next week on, I think, the 6th episode of Palantir Weekly.
Can I get a booyah? Amit, a booyah.
Booyah!
See you guys.
Peace, guys.
Sachin's like, I'm a professional. I don't fucking do that.